a lot of time through my YouTube channel. I do have a YouTube channel to bust the various COVID-19 related myth. And today I can see there are 52 participants in today's talk. So allow me to share my screen. I have a very brief presentation. Though the time is for 1.5 hours, the presentation is hardly 30 minutes long. So we can also have a few questions afterwards. So I hope my screen is visible, all of you.
Not yet. Share your screen, sir.
Yeah, I shared it. So
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now it's visible, sir.
All right. Perfect. So the topic, you know, this Pinab requested me to talk is on algal diversity and conservation. So yeah, that is what it is. So it's my lab logo, and from Central University, which is an emerging new Central University in rural Punjab. The area is village in Bathinda district, which is one of the most backward districts of Punjab. And it is something like Central University of Tamil Nadu, which is also an emerging new Central University. So I've been working here for the last 10 years, and yeah, we are central, just like you know, Pondicherry University. So I would like to start my talk with asking a question here: planet's natural oxygen factory. If I ask, you know, well, this is a very generic talk. It's nothing too scientific about it. It's more or less an outreach or extension talk. And I use kind of similar talk when my interaction with the school kids as well. I also do a lot of outreach activities in schools and public libraries. So if I ask a question like this: planet's natural oxygen factory, the biggest oxygen factory, imagine an oxygen factory which is a natural, you know, close your eyes and imagine it. Then the students will imagine. Then I ask them, students, what did you actually imagine? What kind of mental imagery did you have when I say oxygen factory? And usually the imagery goes like this: trees, of course, you know, canopies, the green canopies that actually giving lots of oxygen, isn't it? The oxygen is the reason that in the air that we breathe. So this is a natural oxygen factory, isn't it? And this is what the usual textbook says. In our school times, we learned that the trees are our, you know, the oxygen factories of Earth. But friends, this view is highly biased. It's not really scientific. You know, the science by you know, a few questions, right? And keep on moving on. So science we use right now is entirely different. We know that this is highly biased because of a lot of cognitive biases. One of the major cognitive biases is that we are living in land. And we are more accustomed to the biodiversity, especially plant diversity of the land. You know, the terrestrial plants, we are very well know it, but we really don't know about the marine plants because not many people have been ventured into the depths of the ocean. So, you know, this view that the plants, especially trees, are natural factories of the world, highly skewed. And the reality is that if you actually zoom out, and if you look from the space, this is a real picture taken by the Apollo 11 mission. And if you take it from a distance, you know, this is taken in, I'm not sure how many, 300,000 kilometers, I guess. It's a very famous picture. It's called Pale Blue Dot, the Blue Marble. The picture is called the Blue Marble. You can search it out. So 300,000 kilometers from the Earth, if you look at it, it's marble. It looks like a blue marble, the same marble that we use during our school days to play the games. You know, you know, the something like a billiards game, but this is that village game. I was also brought up in a village in the rural Kerala. So this is a blue color because, of course, 72% of our planet Earth surface is our ocean. So ocean is tremendously important. You know, and if you zoom in any of this blue color, the blue is all because of the ocean, as you all know. If you zoom into this, in this oceanic water, each droplet contains millions of tiny plants. As you know, it's Picoplankton. So though the name Picoplankton is a misnomer, because pico doesn't mean that it's actually in picos, of course. The pico and femto are in atomic sizes, right? So the planktons means that these are free floating. It cannot actively swim. So these are floating plant. That is why it is called plankton in opposite to the necton, which can actively swim. So this is pico. Just to say that it's really small, it doesn't mean that it's in pico size. Actually, the size of these planktons are in micrometers. Few hundred micrometer. So these picoplankton is usually cyanobacteria, and especially the two species are really important. Cyanococcus and prochlorococcus. These are really abundant in world's oceans. So I also write quite often popular science articles. Some of you might have read articles. This is one of the paper which I wrote. It's not really a paper, it's an article in Dream 2047. By the way, Dream 2047 is a very good popular science magazine published by Vigyan Prasad of the Department of Science and Technology. It's a Government of India publication, and it's really interesting. It's one side is all English, and if you turn, the other side is all in Hindi. So it's a dual language. Hindi is especially important for North India rural schools. It's in, the language, as you know, it's in Hindi in North, right? And more importantly, in South, I know the situation in Malayalam for sure. I'm not really sure about Tamil, but in Malayalam we do have excellent popular science magazines and excellent popular science books. For example, when I was in class 7, I read The Cosmos of the Carl Sagan. That one book actually captivated me to choose a career in science. So I have read many of the Carl Sagan's books in Malayalam. Because we do have a foundation in Kerala called Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad. They do have very interesting science magazines in Malayalam. And I'm not sure in Tamil, do you have any this kind of science magazine targeted to kids, school kids, especially primary school students? Eureka, for example, in Kerala, we do have it. And Tamil also, I'm sure you must be having some kind of thing, and also translation of world very famous world's popular science magazines do exist in South and Tamil Nadu as well. But unfortunately, in North India, this is okay. It's in Hindi medium. This is Hindi, what is that? Government schools are really in pathetic conditions, and that is where I usually go to interact with the school kids for my extension talks. An unfortunate situation is that Hindi schools don't have any good popular science magazines, neither textbooks. Neither books, I'm saying, the popular science books. Of course, they do have school textbooks, but these are really in outdated syllabus, right? So Dream 2047, actually, that fills the lacune to a certain extent. So it's really good. And it's only 5 rupees. It's less expensive than a cup of tea. So it's really good magazine. So, so 65%, friends, 65% is more than 2/3 of the air that we breathe. So if I ask you to breathe 3 times, let us breathe together. Number 1, breathe in, breathe out. Number 2, breathe in, breathe out. And number 3, breathe in and breathe out. So it's something like exercise in Arobil, right? In your Pondicherry, Arobil also does this kind of thing. I've been to Pondicherry a few years back. Arobil is a fantastic place. I really remember spending some time there, yes. So you breathed in 3 times, friends. Out of 3 times, 2 times, friends, oxygen comes from ocean. And these are also done by 2 organisms here, Cyanococcus and Prochlorococcus. So if you ask me, do I believe in God? Yes, I do believe in God. Do I have a prayer room? Yes, I do have a prayer room, and this is my God. These 2 are Cyanococcus and Prochlorococcus. Every single day I say thank you for these 2 wonderful creatures. Because if these 2 are not there, I wouldn't have been alive today. Neither you, none of us. In fact, none of the aerobic life. Only anaerobic small mobs, especially Bacteria, can live without these 2 organisms, because without them, There is no oxygen, So if you look back in geologic time, the deep geologic time, Hadean, there was no life at all, and after heavy bombardment in Archean, origin of life, and throughout the Archean time, friends, it's only ruled by the cyanobacteria like Chlorococcus and Cyanococcus. They are the first photosynthetic organisms on Earth, and they are the one responsible for oxygenating Earth's early atmosphere, so that the other organisms like eukaryotes and other land plants can evolve later stage. So they are the real primary photosynthetic photosynthesizers, the cyanobacteria. And there's the same thing if you look back in time. The fossils, the oldest fossils is these stromatolites. These are some of the very oldest fossils, 3.5 billion years of the claim is still contested. Some say even 4 billion years of fossils they have seen, especially trace fossil. But this one is one of the very well known. This is a pic from Darwin in Australia. So this is basically a very old fossil of the biofilms. And this Picoplankton, when it dies, what is the smell of its dead body? Again, I say to the school kids, smell of the Picoplankton. They haven't even seen Picoplankton in their life, but I said, well, you all know it, the smell of it. So to know the smell of this dead body, the stinking dead body of this Picoplankton, all you have to do is just go to the nearest petrol pump. Yes, petrol and diesel, friends. 99% of the petroleum comes from the biomass of marine algae. A fact not many people know it. So because of this Picoplankton and other phytoplankton, it sinks deep down on the ocean bed, and because of the hydrostatic and geologic pressures, and after millions of years, these long chain hydrocarbons form. And that is what we now call it as a fossil fuel. Yes, fossil fuel, because it's a fossilized remains of the phytoplankton. So we do have the algal diversity to talk about. We do have fantastic Coccolithophores and diatoms, which are siliceous, structures, and of course, Coccolithophores are also used in construction company, as an abrasive, right? Emiliana Huxley is also responsible. There is a very interesting connection of this Coccolithophores with monsoon. So not many people knows it. This is a picture taken in Antarctica. I was part of the Indian Antarctic mission, the 6th Indian Antarctic mission. And Professor Sundara Pandian introduced me that I wrote a few books. And one of the book is called Voyage to Antarctica, published by DST of the Government of India. And Voyage to Antarctica, I have written many of this, what I actually found in 2 of our Indian Antarctic stations, Bharati Station and Maitri Station. This is near Bharati Station. Bharati is our new station. So you can see this sort of foam or froth. So this froth in pristine Antarctic oligotrophic lakes. This is actually a glacial meltwater lake, very clear. You can see the bottom of the lake, no pollution at all. So if you look at this kind of froth, you would be surprised. I also had this impression. So earlier I used to think this froth as polluting places, especially if you go to Delhi. Of course, prior COVID-19 time, if you go to Delhi, the Yamuna river bank, you can see this kind of froth because of a lot of industrial surfactants. This is all industry pollution happening there. But in Antarctica, the froth, and yes, this froth is basically Phyoscistis Antarctica. It's also related to the earlier Coccolithophores. So this Phyoscistis is also, the froth is basically a spore dispersal mechanism. That is what a very interesting thing. It can actually go from one lake to another lake by air. The wind can blow away from one lake to another. It's very exciting adaptations it do have. So this is a connection which is not many people knew about. This Coccolithophores and other algae, single cell tiny ocean plants, can help to make the cloud. And even monsoon, friends, in Tamil Nadu where you live, Pondicherry, it's one of the driest area, right? It's because of the rain cloud Kerala gets a lot of rain, but Tamil Nadu is quite dry, and of course you need to have more, rain. So for that, you need algae, oceanic plants. You really need it because these algae release a chemical called dimethyl sulfide. So dimethyl sulfide, or DMS or DMO, it plays a key role in regulating Earth's climate because it's basically a cloud seeding molecule. It's a climate gas, you know. So it seeds, it goes to the ocean, the cloud, and it actually seeds. It's something like silver nitrite, chemicals, cloud seeder. And this is what is responsible for our monsoon. So this kind of, especially lithophores, the extensive algal blooms in Arabian Sea, and its degradation. So especially its degradation is more important for causing this DMSO in the upper atmosphere. So our team has done a lot of work on this kind of diversity. One of our interesting things which has been reported quite often in the media is about the alien rain, extraterrestrial theories, unexplored on unexplained files. So these are basically the rain which is red color, you know. So blood rain, is it a new phenomenon? No, even Homer, Greek writer, it's Iliad, do contains the blood rain. Even Bible, if you read Bible, Genesis part do contain mentions of the blood rain. So it's a natural phenomenon. The raindrops are red in color. So till now we really have no clue what this red color in these raindrops were, and we got these samples and we barcoded. So that is what we do. Our work is mostly on molecular systematics and DNA barcoding. So we barcoded it, and we found that these were nothing but a green microalgae, something like a necklace like microalgae. And we compared it, and we actually got the nearest match in Czechoslovakia. So we collaborated to write a paper. So basically, this Trentipolia annulata, this is also something like Phyoscystis. It's the rain is basically the spore, a dispersal mechanism. It's actually Gosori or Saurus, goes into the atmosphere and it disperses to a very large area at once. So it is something like a spore dispersal, like the land plants, Indian milkweed, very common throughout India, or Gossypium, the cotton plant. These are also for the spore dispersal. That is also quite often, that has been reported in the media. Now, this blooms, coming to algal blooms near the monsoon, especially a few weeks ago, this kind of blooms are really common. If you have seen Life of Pi movie, bioluminescent blooms in the ocean has been beautifully captured in some of the scene in that movie. So this sort of, the algal blooms, especially bioluminescent blooms. This is a picture of the Maharashtra coast. So Malvan coast of Sindhudurga district. It's a Nocticula, friends, Nocticula scintillans. It is taken from Research Matters. By the way, Research Matters is a really interesting website. I'm not sure how many of you know it. They do feature latest stories in a blog-like style, and I pick up some of the exciting story not merely from the Research Matters, but throughout the world of science. And I feature every single month few stories, especially 25 to 30 stories and new other career opportunity for students. And I feature them in a show called Curiosity in my YouTube channel. So please have a look at the early episode of the Curiosity and upcoming by subscribing to my channel. So in my latest episode, that is October episode, I featured this story. This is the latest news that says that Nocticula algal blooms in Arabian Sea. There is a link with the snow meltdown in Himalayas. How snow meltdown in Himalayas can accelerate the Nocticula scintillans blooms? Through the change in the sea surface temperature. So because of the increasing temperatures, algal blooms are really increasing. And this is directly linked with the Himalayan snow meltdown, glacier retreat. So, science is really exciting, especially this sort of transdisciplinary science where you are, you're collaborating with the algal biologists, are collaborating with oceanographers, and also the climate change specialists, and also in the glaciologists, who's working on Himalayan glaciers. So to bring out this sort of very intricate patterns. So another story. This is basically, your friend Abhinav told me through WhatsApp message about the Botswana. Botswana is a South African country, landlocked country near the South Africa. Well, I haven't been to Botswana, but I flew over on my way to South Africa. So Botswana, by the way, they're doing pretty well. They're really good in human development index, and per capita income is also pretty good. So Botswana also have got several landlocked lakes. And recent story is that these lakes, so many elephants are dying. I think 300 or so elephants are being dead near the this one, the Botswana. So basically, the elephant, you never knew that. I mean, I never knew that the elephant's conservation status is really almost endangered, really now. So it is earlier it was a threatened species. It's no more simple threatened. It's basically, I think it's vulnerable, or not even vulnerable. It's almost extreme situation. Actually, the Indian elephant. This is basically African elephant dog. So elephants are dying near the lake. So it's basically something to do with the hazardous cyanobacterial blooms of these lakes in Botswana. So as so many such algal blooms, Fisteria is also responsible for the fish death. This is a dinoflagellate, by the way. Algal blooms, especially hazardous algal blooms, are mostly dinoflagellate, a group of single cell algae. And coming to the good side of the story of the algae, of course, algae is responsible for a number of the treatment. So especially the hot topic of the day is COVID-19. So the frontline response for COVID-19 treatment is remdesivir. That is what even the Trump was under, remdesivir therapy. So that is what we usually do. But this is a story, again, I featured in my earlier episode of Curiosity, is that in cell studies, seaweed extract outperforms remdesivir in blocking COVID-19 virus. So this is basically in Cell Discovery, one of the top journals. They published this finding. So it is basically fucoidans, or complex sulfated polysaccharide from Saccharina japonica, which is a brown seaweed, so-called kelp, very large kelp. So these fucoidans do have the extracts do protects from COVID-19, but mind that it is in cell study. So if you look at this kind of cell studies, there are so many reports of the anti-cancer, antimicrobial, anti-diabetic, I mean, there's so many bioactivity studies of the seaweeds, but tons of treatments show the promise in cell cultures, but fail for various reasons in clinic. Another example would be chloroquine. Plant extract, the chloroquine also is very good in the cell trials, but not in clinical trials. So until you have put through the human trials, that all is hype and hypothesis. Especially bioavailability is also of course. So anyway, it's a promise, but a way to go, miles to go, really. And another interesting story I featured in one of the recent episodes of the Curiosity is that turbo-boosted photosynthesis could mean cars running on algae. Basically, the Cambridge scientists, they published in recent, few weeks back. As you can see that this is 26th August 2020. Artificial regulation of state transition for augmenting and photosynthesis using synthetic light harvesting polymer material. So it's something like artificial photosynthesis, to turbo boost the photosynthesis, algal photosynthesis. So that is what they did. Very interesting piece of information. Further, towards ultimate design of this ultimate or nature-inspired or biomimetic solar panel by the algae. So algae, also diatoms, are also used in medical forensics, even for proving rape cases. This has been used in one of the most infamous or politically framed as well case in Kashmir. You might know that. So a diatomist, she's my good friend. She was involved with proving the rape case, that it is basically not rape, it was basically a drown case. So anyway, it is kind of controversial, but diatoms are used in medical forensics because it is a proxy for drowning, and even which lake it drowned. So, for example, a person might have been drowned in a lake in one place, for example, in Pondicherry, but took that dead body and put that into a pond in Madras, Mylapore pond, for example. And still, the forensics experts can check out in their lungs what kind of diatom it is, and is that species common in Mylapore, or is that species common in Pondicherry? Then they can say with a very high posterior probability that the person was killed in Pondicherry and brought into the Mylapore to dispose it off in the Mylapore pond. All these things are very interesting premises of the medical forensics. And of course, medicines from algae, marine natural products are really emerging field. But as you know, always take with a pinch of pepper and salt, because majority of the cell line studies doesn't translate into into the clinic, especially because the IC50 values are too high in micrograms. It has to be in milligrams or even nanograms to be clinically significant. Many algae are edible and very expensive. Algal farming or mariculture need no fresh water and no land. That is the biggest advantage of algal farming. Usually agriculture need a lot of fresh water. As you know, world's freshwater resources are diminishing day by day, especially in the water tables in Indian subcontinent is lowering. It's a huge catastrophe we are actually heading to. So fresh water is a major resource, and also in the UN SDG, if you look at that, the water is a very important SDG, and the land is also a very important thing. So in algal farming, or silviculture, some people call it a silviculture. Instead of agriculture, it's silviculture. You don't need any land because you can just farm it offshore. Ocean we have plenty, and it's pictured as a future of agriculture to ensure the food security. Again, food security and poverty reduction is UN SDG. So we really have to work towards this thing. And even our Prime Minister, in one of his talk a few years back, he pointed out that the farming of seaweeds can enhance the water resources because it doesn't need any the freshwater resources. So that is what the Prime Minister Modi stands in this line as well. And the biofuel, of course, a lot of people are working on the biofuel, but it's kind of contested again because a lot of research is happening. Even the US famous company ExxonMobil, and they even stopped researching on the microalgal biofuel because of the inconclusive results. But the promise here is that the lipid content of microalgae is undoubtedly high, 40% of the dry weight. So if you compare with this Jatropha, the oil seed plant, which is used for biofuel production, it's only 32% of the dry weight is the oil. But in the case of Botrycoccus brownie, it is 40%, and it's a top candidate for the biofuel production. The problem here is that the microalgae production need a very expensive, the system, especially photobioreactors and artificial lighting. So all these things add on to the expenses. So you really need to put in lots of investment. Then only you can actually make the biofuel. So is it really economically viable or not? That is the question here. And coming to the green microalgae, our team has shown endophytic algae living inside the ulva. This is a cladophora, ulva living inside the cladophora. So the coral reefs are also bleaching. That is another issue now. As you know, the coral reef itself is an exciting avenue for research because the coral reef is a dinoflagellate, right? Symbiodinium, zooxanthellae, and Cnidarian, the animal and algal symbiotic. So algal partner is really important in the coral reef, biology. Because when the algal partner dies, that is dinoflagellate called Symbiodinium dies because of the global acidification repercussion of the global warming and the climate change. So acidification happens because of the excess CO2 in the atmosphere get mixed with oceanic water to form carbonic acid that brings down the pH. as the pH is in log scale, a very slight reduction in the pH itself has a huge complications. So the Lakshadweep, if you ever dive into the Lakshadweep Sea, you can see that most of the coral reef in Lakshadweeps are now bleached. So bleached means, instead of technicolor, it's all white in color. So to change the climate change, so the climate change mitigation, the term mitigation means, possible solution. The solution to the climate change, yeah, we need the planet-wide effort. But of course, even your own effort, right? Instead of driving a car, you can go by cycle. I'm a huge fan of cycle. Every single day I go by cycle to my university. So cycling is excellent for your health as well as for the health of our planet, and also health of our nation, because 99% of the fuel is imported from the Middle East with a huge burden on the taxpayer, right? So the cycling is really good for the climate change. I'm sure that many of the students in your university is coming by cycle. So we really need to, to promote the cycling infrastructure in urban infrastructure in India. So that could be a good solution for climate change. Yet another solution which pitted by a number of climatologists is to remove the excess CO2 from the atmosphere. So how to get rid of the CO2 from the atmosphere? Friends, the same thing which I told you when I began this talk. I said that 65% of the oxygen comes from marine picoplankton, Cyanobacteria and Prochlorococcus, and 65% of CO2 removal also does the same organism, friends. So because it's a dual process, right? The CO2 gets in while oxygen goes out in the light phase of the photosynthesis. So it's really important. So the carbon capture and sequestration is also an emerging field, CCS, especially with algae. Algal carbon capture and sequestration used to be a trendsetter a few years back, but now the things have tremendously changed. And nowadays, if you look at the publications, most of the CCS publications are chemical. Chemical capture and sequestration, not really algal, but of course, algae is also very important. Algae does the majority of the natural carbon sequestration because they have been doing that for millions of years before we started burning the fossil fuels, fossils of these picoplanktons. And they were always helping us to mitigate the climate change because the CO2 equilibria have been maintaining by the picoplanktons of world seas for millions of years, So before we started actually industrialization and coal burning, right? That is what everything started from in 18th century in England, right? When the emergence of the industrialization that quickly spread throughout the world. So CO2 capturing is also an avenue where the phycologists are working on. Though there are a lot of promises, but the real outcome remains, quite disappointing, right? So CO2 and oxygen. So yeah, the discussion comes back to what I started, the picoplanktons. They're really responsible for the oxygen, evolution of oxygen as well as CO2 capture. And because it's really important, the picoplankton, to survive, to save the picoplankton or conserve the algae, we all have to live a lifestyle of sustainability. You have to reduce the waste. For that, what I have been doing is that even my own nail clippings, friends, nail clipping, and even my hair. I cut my hair. I clip my. Of course, everybody clip your nails. Right, silly. And all these things, what I do is that I put into my compost bin. I do have home composting, and for the last many months, I haven't been throwing out any of my organic waste. So everything I compost, and I do have a gardening, and that is, transition towards zero waste. Instead of purchasing, try to find happiness in whatever belongings that you already have it. So that is what, and try to, commute by cycle. All these things, what I'm doing in my life. So it's nothing very, very, challenging. Actually, if you think that transitioning towards bike commuting might be really challenging, but you're wrong. It's really easy, friends. I have my first-hand experience. It's really, really easy. So we have only one pale blue dot. The Carl Sagan used to say it's a pale blue dot. The Voyager expedition. You might have seen the Voyager is the only Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are the only two spacecraft human being ever made which is outside the solar system. In 1972, there has been a very interesting picture of the Earth taken by Voyager 1, many billions of kilometers away. That pic is called the pale blue dot by the special request of the Carl Sagan. So if you look at that, well, we have only one Earth, friends. So to preserve this Earth and its diversity, especially algal diversity, what we can do is to live a lifestyle with the lowest carbon footprint. So think of the consumer choices that we make. We exercise. Instead of ironing your cloth, you can go for steaming. Instead of cooking, boiling for a long time to cook, for example, sambar or whatever you want to cook at home. So you can steam it. Vegetable steaming takes a lot lesser time. It saves a lot of your energy. And instead of using shampoo for your hair, even look at my bathroom. I made several choices for the last many years. I've not been using any shampoo or conditioner because all these things are coming with a lot of plastic, right? Simply you're throwing out everything. So instead of that, you can go with herbal choices, or you can even go with solid soap. What's the problem with soap? Why you want to go for a shower gel? And if you're wearing jeans, think of it. Jeans also have got tremendous environmental impact. I'm no more using jeans. I'm not after fashion, but I'm using cotton. I mean, what's the problem with having a cotton trousers? Jeans, friends, it has got the microplastics in it because lycra is a synthetic fiber, and also dyeing. You should read about what is actually happening in southern China. It has got a tremendous environmental impact. So every consumer choices that we make, think twice, because ultimately it goes back to the same story: planet's natural oxygen factories, algae. And to conserve the algae, we should live our life in accordance with nature. Thank you so much. Nanni namaskaram. That's Malayalam Nanni, and Tamil also I know it's Nanri. And this is my YouTube channel, bit.ly/Bastf. I read again, bit.ly/Bastf, BASTF. Thanks a lot, and open for any questions.
Thank you very much, Felix, for your excellent, informative, and impressive lecture. So,
thank you so much, sir. It was a very engaging session, and there are a few questions, so I'll read them out. So Akshit Shenoy has something regarding the Nocticula sentinel blooms. So he wants to know if it's Noctiluca and not Nocticula. So that's his doubt.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Am I audible now?
Felix, Harini is audible.
Sir, can you hear me? Can I read out the
Yes.
first question?
Yes.
Yeah. So Akshat Shenoy has a question regarding the Nocticular sentinel blooms. He asks if it's Noctiluca and not Nocticula.
Noctiluca, yeah, Noctiluca, right.
Okay. And Shushma has a question. She asks, sir, you mentioned about algal blooms in Swana Lake. How did they end up there?
Well, I have no idea. I also read the story recently, and how the origin of these algal blooms and all are really complicated. So definitely, maybe there is a the equilibria, the local lake equilibria might have been affected because of the eutrophication. So usually the algal blooms are a resultant of the eutrophication. So are they actually putting in some stuff? And usually eutrophication happen because of the because of the high the pollution, the anthropogenic pollution. Maybe that is a reason why the equilibria got affected in the lake. And I'm not sure about exactly what really happened, but it looks like what I read is that these are these are inside the wildlife area. So the industrial eutrophication chances are really slim. Yeah, and maybe it's connected with the climate change. I have no idea.
Okay. So next question is by Amrita. She saw recently there has been a reports on sea acidification. How can the algae help in the mitigation?
Yeah, so see, ocean acidification is basically it's a repercussion of the climate change, as you know, because of the CO2 level in the in the atmosphere. This gets mixed up with the ocean, right? Ocean is 72%. I told you, and as I said that in my brief talk today morning as well. Yes, so the acidification is nothing new about it. It's nothing recent. The person who asked this question said that it's a recent phenomenon. Nothing like recent. It's been known for the last 20 years. So the acidification is a very well known phenomenon. And now the question is that how algae can help to mitigate the ocean acidification. Unfortunately, it's not possible. So to mitigate the ocean acidification, the only way is to stop, polluting further. That means stop, making our, CO2 level increase. So we have to reduce the CO2 level. So to reduce the CO2 level in the atmosphere is the only option. For that, algae can help, because algae can absorb the excess CO2 level in the atmosphere. So that is exactly what I said about the carbon capture and sequestration. That is only one solution for that. So in ocean marine algae as well, to a certain level, it can absorb the CO2 from the ocean water. And the CO2, when CO2 is removed from the water, it definitely leads to, the pH level will increase. So that means that could be an option for it. But unfortunately, this picoplanktons and marine algae also are getting affected because of the global acidification, the ocean acidification. So it's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
Okay, sir. So the next question is also by Amrita. Sir, recently there has been also detection of snow algae in Antarctic region. How can they affect the heat reflecting capacity of snow?
Yeah, this is a very good thing. I also observed this snow algae. Well, the work is still under process. Unfortunately, we couldn't publish that finding. So, snow algal blooms are really getting common in Antarctica. Basically, it has something to do with global warming, because these algae were not there earlier times. Now the thing is that Antarctica is getting warmed up, and many of the warm species things can now get introduced into the Antarctica. And this algae, especially pink snow algae, Chlamydomonas nivalis is a species that is really common in Antarctica. And this pink snow algae, what it happened is there is an effect called albedo. Albedo effect has something to do with the reflectivity of the white surfaces. So as you know, the Antarctica is snow covered, completely ice. Right, so it's a white continent of the Earth, and because of the whiteness, it reflects most of the IR radiations back into the outer space. Whatever radiations that actually stuck in gets back, not everything, but almost 80%. So when this color changes because of the algal blooms, where instead of white color it becomes pink because the algal blooms, and it starts absorbing the excess IR radiations from the light. So that leads to increased snow melting of the Antarctica. You might have read a very interesting story I read this one in a book called Gaia. It's a recent book. It's about Peru. So one interesting way that one environmentalist in Peru did to mitigate this global warming, and especially glacial retreat in Andes Mountains in Peru, is that the person started painting these mountains with white color paint. Does it have an impact? Yes. And because of this one practice, he could able to bring back some lost glaciers in the Andes Mountains. So that is also taking good cues from albedo effect. So if you can paint our granite rocks with the white paint, it can also cool down tremendously. All these things are, practical or common sense solutions. Yeah.
So I have a question. So you spoke about how, if I'm correct, that rainfall also has in connection with the algae
Correct.
and all that. So how do you think, how do you monitor the presence and also the conservation strategies for that? Being an amateur, I also want to know, is there use of remote sensing extensively in this field also to monitor?
Yeah. This field has got, I can say that remote sensing is the first step. As you're coming into this field, I would strongly suggest you to take a GIS course and accustom yourself with various remote sensing methods that used for, profiling these blooms and all. And that is the first step. You have to actually, you can also use Bayesian inference for narrowing down the locations where you really have to look up it. So the seasonality you can study, and this season, for example, in September, a location, the lat launch area will have this bloom. That is what your GIS software says. Then you can propose the idea to the Ministry of Earth Sciences, and then you can be part of our coastal expeditions. NIO in Goa has got a lot of coastal expedition. NCPOR also have a few expeditions too, but NCPOR is mostly onto deep ocean as well as polar region, while NIO has got lots of this kind of coastal expedition. So you can collaborate with these two organizations and be part of the coastal expedition for ground validation. So ground validation is really important for remote sensing data. So unless you validate it on the ground, then it could be fallacious, right? The data might mislead you. Yeah.
And sir, also being a student from ecology and environmental science, most of our study is based on terrestrial habitat. We have minimum exposure to marine and all of that. So what will be the challenges that we will face going from this field, the transition from this field to marine biology?
Transition means, see, basically the same thing. Say, many people are asking me, is it a good decision to choose a marine field for the further studies? So my suggestion is that, okay, of course, after masters, till master, I will never advise anybody to go for super specialized field, because chances of clearing next JRF is very slim. So once you are into the PhD, of course, going to the marine field has got many plus and minus. One of the important plus is that competition is going to be tremendously less. People working on marine field is really, really low. So to get good grants, or to get a paper or in specialized journal is quite good. At the same time, impact factor is very low. So many of these jobs are looking mainly, they are really blind towards impact factor of the publication. So if you look at the algal publication or any publications on marine field, is quite low comparing with the terrestrial. So as a funding opportunities, grant opportunities for the marine field is also pretty low, comparing with the terrestrial, or because of this bias, subconscious bias, that we are basically a land dwelling animal and we know what is happening around us rather than the ocean. It's a hard reality that India, being one of the very famous country in the world with a high GDP, we have not a single research submarine. Can you ever imagine it? We do have an active space program. ISRO is launching so many satellites into space, but we really have no clue what is happening, what is there in the Indian Ocean, even in the Arabian Ocean. Recently, 2 years back, 1 year back, there had been a major study published in journal Nature by a team from Japan. So they used their deep diving submarine onto the Arabian Sea. They found a very exciting place of hydrothermal vent with a lot of species richness. And all these things we are losing out because we don't really have any submarine. So that is the reason that we are actually losing out. So because people are, they're kind of reluctant to spend money on ocean research rather than on the space or the terrestrial life. So yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think that's all questions for today. Um, I would like to thank you for such an engaging and very interactive session. It was